Hello friends and welcome back to my channel. My name is Caitlin from Florals.com and welcome back to the 2020 Creative Reset series. Today will be a bit different than our last one. We're continuing on with reviewing our creative year in 2019, and today we're specifically looking back at our goals. Now, if you did not necessarily have goals in 2019, creative ones set, that's okay. We're going to be doing some stuff later in this video that I think you'll find just as valuable as if you did have goals and, working through those kind of things and your ideals for scrapbooking and all that fun stuff. So today I have some paper ready because we're going to be doing some work together. I also have another notepad that we'll be addressing later, but stay tuned for that. So looking back at 2019, I know a lot of people made goals last year. I made a whole video about making goals, had a worksheet, and I'll have that stuff linked down below in case you guys are interested in seeing it, just to compare, how I was last year trying to make goals and how I am this year trying to make my own goals. And we're not making goals just yet. This is just reviewing of 2019 and the goals we might have had. So pull out your goals wherever you may have written them, sticky note, on your whiteboard, in your phone, wherever they might be. I had to actually go back and watch the video because I have no idea where I wrote my goals. No idea. And that attests to how much I cared about them. No idea. They weren't driving me. They weren't doing anything. So what were my 2019 goals? My first one, and sorry this font's small, but at least I'm talking about it, was create 150 projects. Now in the video, I actually defined projects as paper crafting projects. So that would be cards, layouts, etc. My second goal was complete one of the following albums. One of the following albums, because I gave myself a choice. Now I called this a flexible goal. The first goal was a numbered goal. Second one was a flexible goal, a project-oriented flexible goal. And I gave myself my Disney album from 2016, my DC album, or my Vermont 2017 album. And I know you guys haven't ever seen me write before, I don't think, but I have some crazy handwriting, so be ready. And then my third and final goal was a time-oriented goal of create something every day. Now, if you guys are interested in more of my personal reflection about my goals and stuff like that, I'm just going to go over some generic stuff today, but I did a personal reflection over on my Patreon in a blog post that everyone gets over there, talking about me going through if I thought my goals were worthy and if they were successful and all that kind of stuff. Once you have your goals here, and if you went through my goal building, whatever you want to call that thing that I did last year, you'll know if you have a project-based goal or if you have a quantity-based goal or if you had a time-based goal, because I talk about that a lot in that video. So definitely check it out if you're interested, link down below, but we'll be going over that when we start writing our goals for next year. But again, we're just in the review stage. Don't jump ahead of yourself. You might start getting overwhelmed if you do that. So we're just trying to keep on track here. So once I had my goals written down, I started asking myself questions to truly reflect back on these following things. So number one, did I achieve the goal? Did I actually achieve it? And I'll have you guys know, I did not achieve all of these. I achieved the top two. The third one was an epic fail, but again, I go into that over my Patreon because it's just a lot. So moving on, was it a realistic goal? So was it realistic at all? Because sometimes when we start the year, we have very, 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 very high hopes. So did our hopes get the best of us when we were making goals? Were we unrealistic knowing that maybe you had a baby on the way, or you knew your child was going off to college, or you knew that you were going to be spending more time at work? All sorts of things that could cause your perception to change at the end of the year if it was realistic or not. Now, just because you didn't achieve it, or just because you did achieve it, does not mean it was realistic. 2 out of 3 of mine I thought were realistic based on my current time constraints and my current life status. Things change, and that's okay, and we need to just evaluate that to better prepare ourselves for the following year when we understand that things again will change. So once you figure out these 2 things, which are simply pretty much yes or no answers in your own mind, because you'll understand the reasoning behind that, what caused you to succeed or fail at these goals. Now, failure is something that I think it's too harsh of a rap. Just because you fail at something doesn't mean you didn't do anything. So say you only created 100 projects. That's doing an amazing job still. So was there a success, or was it a flop or failure? And I think this comes from a positive mindset as well. If you guys are more apt to be optimistic, you'll think that you did great whether you created 10 items or if you created 100 items. You'd be happy if you created 1 album instead of 50 albums, because to you, it might not be an end goal. That's the actual goal. And I think that we often forget that the process is something we enjoy much more than necessarily the end number that we might end up with at the end of the year. So once you start reflecting on these, you'll start to realize some patterns, perhaps, depending on how many goals you had. Again, I had more goals than these, but these were the 3 I shared in my original video that I thought were appropriate to share publicly. I also had personal goals. I had a 20 or a 19 for 2019 list, if you guys remember that. But just looking at these ones specifically, your top goals, let's say, once you evaluate them, can you build on them for next year? Because this is important. Over the course of a year, we all change very, very much without realizing it. So in 2018, when I wrote my 2019 goals, I thought project quantity would be something that would bring me a lot of success and that fulfilling feeling. But I can't say that's the truth anymore. I don't know what's changed exactly, but we'll get through that in the process probably once we start thinking about it. But it's really not the quantity that makes sense, because right now I'm surrounded by completed layouts that are not in albums that no one's looking at. So what is your end goal? Kind of keeping that in mind. And again, we'll get into this a little bit later when we do more interactive pieces like this in our notebooks. So looking at your goals, these are the 4 main questions you should ask yourself. Did you achieve it? Was it realistic? Was it a success or a failure? Depending on how you want to word that, it's personally fine to change all those kind of questions to words of your liking. And can you build on them for next year? And this is a 2-stepped answer as well. So just because you can build on them or edit them does not mean you should. So I could make another project numbered goal for next year. Say I make it 200 projects, but will that give me satisfaction at the end of the year or the end of the day or the end of the month or the end of the week? Because I'm not sure it will. And I think I found that this type of goal, these project-oriented goals, is where I found a lot more joy and success on finishing rather than just 150 projects. You know, this one was vague. I didn't have a clear direction. It was just go, 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 do something, do something, do something. And trust me, I do love the process. I love making layouts. I didn't mind making over 150 layouts, or actually layouts and, you know, additional cards throughout the year, as I shared in my other video. But I don't know if this is really something that I want to be doing in 2020, is pushing all of this stuff on top of me, because 1, I'm clearly changing as a content creator for you guys and on Patreon, where I'm doing these types of videos where we really talk about the elements of scrapbooking beyond just putting pretty things on paper, beyond just looking at a photo saying that's cute, the storytelling aspect, the, you know, organizing aspect, the feelings that come along with this hobby in itself. So I hope you guys are noticing these things in me as you follow me along on my journey, but I hope you're noticing those things in you as well. So if you're not a numbers person and you're more of a time-based person, there's all sorts of goals we can make, and obviously we evaluate them all differently. You might think I've done all of these this year, but that might not be true based on what I show you or what you've seen on camera thus far. And reviewing things like this can be very beneficial to your thinking process for setting goals for next year, for actually completing your goals for next year. So I encourage you to write all this down. I may make a blog post on this if you guys want another printable. I'll have my other printable from last year linked down below. Same sort of process where you write down your goals and stuff, but we're going to be kind of re-evaluating that this year when we get to goal writing. But if you're interested in doing that now, I'll have my 2018 version linked down below so you guys can check it out. But once you've written down your goals and your answers to these questions, let's get to everything else that's sort of on your plate. How do we get all that stuff on the paper? Now, I have this little scratch notebook here, but I also have another notebook that you guys saw. So looking back at 2019, What were your concerns, your worries, your ideas, and your plans that, you know, you thought of, but just kind of had to put aside for life reasons, for design team projects, for space reasons. Say you had to pack up all your stuff and move like I did. Everything was on hold for a while. My scrap room was not the first thing I unpacked. Life gets in the way, and I think it's important that we keep track of things that might accumulate during these times, whether it be you're busy helping your daughter out with her finals and studying, and you know, you'd lose that scrappy time that you value, but you're having valuable time with her. It's okay to have a notebook to jot down things that you need to remember later on for your memory keeping. Because I think oftentimes we think of scrapbooking only when we're in this room. We think about scrapbooking seriously when we're only in this room, or in this space, or in this chair, or at your kitchen table, or at the couch, or driving home from work on a Friday and all you want to do is craft. But you know you have to go make dinner, or you know you have to go pick up the dry cleaning, or you know that you have to go take a nap because you have another shift the next morning. There's lots and lots of reasons that scrapbooking takes the back burner. But I think there's a way to keep it up front in our minds by doing the next thing that I'm about to talk about, which I call brain dumping. And this is a great way to have lists if you're a list person like I am, which I am a total list person. I've talked about this in Vlogmas so far this year. I love lists. I have a bullet journal where I keep my lists. I have numerous notebooks, including this one right here, which I talked about on Patreon. This was my story idea list. So I kept this notebook. It was a partially used notebook, so I pulled it out. But essentially, it's a people, places, and things notebook where I can write down different ideas that I have for stories, and there's glitter in it. Are we surprised? No. But this is just one place I can go to keep track of things. Now, I also have this digitally, so I haven't updated this since I started that video, but on Patreon, but it's nice to have a place to write these kinds of things down. I know Janet at RTS Scrapbooking does similar things where she has a list of stories she wants to tell, inventory lists. I have some of those in here, actually, in this booklet. I had a sketch of how my layout should be in my room at my old place. My inventory for my paper pads before I put it digitally. I had different types of topics for my craft room cleanup stuff. Lists are important for us, and everyone lists differently, so I don't blame you if you don't like the way I list, or if you don't like the way that you currently list. There's tons of ways out there, but let's get some paper out and let's start brain dumping some certain topics that I think will help you in evaluating what your 2019 goals were and if they were successful or not based on some of your lists. So, the first one, once you have your pen and paper or your keyboard and computer, is your current projects you currently have going. So this isn't ideas, these are just current projects. And again, I have these digitally as well, although I do love handwriting lists. So I have my yearly albums, and then it was 2014 through 2019. I definitely have layouts for these. I don't even think I have albums for all of these. And I spelled albums wrong, but that's okay. So I have my yearly albums, at least 5 I have. I also have a 90s album, and you know, it's not organized well, but I have them, so I can write that down. I have my specific albums, which I like to break out by themselves because I find that it's easier that way. So I have a Disney 2016, I have a Washington, D.C., and these are current projects. Not the dones, not the maybes, the current projects you have started. I have a couple mini albums started, but I'll just write down one. I have a graduation album started. I mean, right now it looks like I have 8 projects going on all at once, which is good to note, but if you're someone who likes to jump from project to project, I think it's nice to write these all down. You could keep track of how often you work on them in the new year. Say you want to work on each one equally. Keeping a little tally chart would be nice, you know, to make sure that, oh, I worked on Disney 2016 5 times this week, but didn't touch any of my other ones. If you're a person who tends to work that way, again, it really depends on your style, your motivation, and that kind of thing. I found this year that I am more of a specific album goal-oriented person, so I think my goals should be circled around specific projects. So, important to note those, not necessarily to work off of them as goals, but just to, you know, make sure you're keeping track of how much work you're putting into these things, because in the end, say it took you 8 years to finish your 2014 album, but only 1 to finish your 2019. Well, there must be some sort of discrepancy there where you either thought that it couldn't be done or you just weren't focusing on it because it wasn't as exciting as the current. So evaluating those kind of things will be very helpful too. And one thing that I didn't let myself do was I didn't let myself start another Disney album. Even though I have photos printed, I'm not allowed to start them until I finished that album. So those kind of rules, all personal kind of rules, you don't have to follow them, you don't have to do them, but whatever it is, it's good to note them. Then the fun part starts, your finished projects. Now I understand for some people this will be a lot longer list depending on how long you've been scrapbooking, but honestly I don't have that many finished albums. I just finished Christmas 2016 this year, yay! And that was a mini album. I finished Vermont 2017 this year, and that was a mini album, a 6x8. Pittsburgh road trip was finished up, I think, last year. 30 Days of Thankful was last year, and that was a mini. These are all mini albums, I'm just not realizing. And then my graduation chipboard album. And you know, it's nice to see these reflected on. I might have more finished projects, but like these are the few that I came up with for my brain dump list. And it doesn't have to be a complete list. Don't go through all of your stuff just to write everything down. You know what your value and your time is worth. So it's just important to have some sort of reflection element down for things that you finished this year, things that you finished the year before, you know, sort of like a little running tally, a 3-year mark or something like that. Again, because it's there to motivate you, it's there to help you along, and to say, do you remember how I felt after I finished the Vermont 2017 album? I felt amazing once I finished that album. You know what I didn't feel amazing about? Completing those 5 dog layouts. You know what I mean? And again, depending on how you work, they could be completely different. Mainly because I think this is like a one story. Do you know what I mean? Like this was one story for my lifetime. One trip was one story. Well, lots of little stories, but one story line, if you will. So these seem to be more impactful for me rather than the every calendar day of a whole year, because it's not a consistent story. It's usually choppy stories, but maybe that's just me. So moving on, what else do we want to document and write down? This one's going to be a long list for a lot of you, but projects you want to start. Because obviously, if you're like me, I don't let some projects. I don't let myself start another project until I finish one. But if you're also not like me, you might have 1,000 other projects already started, more than me. So this list might be a lot shorter because you've already taken action and started them, which is perfectly fine. People work in different ways. So for example, I want to start all my other Disney albums. There's a lot of them. And I haven't really figured out how I want to organize them now that I live here and have become an annual pass holder. You know, that kind of puts a whole different spin on those memories I used to have, where it was like this very, very special thing that we only got to do every couple of years. Now it's like I can go this weekend, and it's crazy. You know, that kind of mindset change from, you know, childhood memories to young adulthood memories, I guess. I want to start some traveler's notebooks for the seasons. I talked about this with my patrons too, but I haven't fully thought out the whole idea, so don't ask me about it. It's just a random idea I had. Then I also wanted to do an album for my mother, and then I also wanted to do a graduation album for my niece, so she can put her photos in once she graduates. Lots of ideas. Again, this is just a sampling. This could be its own page, probably. And you don't have to think of everything under the sun. Again, this is just a sampling. And what I would suggest is to prioritize these, like in a wish list format. So which one would you love to be able to do first? So I would love to be able to do Disney first, and then yada yada. I don't know. I'd probably have to pick one of those years because there's several years. But, you know, prioritizing them in a way that way, if you do end up trying to pick a project-based goal, maybe you should start a whole new project. And again, we'll go into that part. Once we have all these details written down, we'll then go into that part for goal setting in general. Now, I guess the kind of fun part begins. I'm just going to write it down. I'm not even going to say it. And you won't be able to read it till after. essentially your fears and concerns. So what is stopping you from achieving your goals? What is stopping you from starting these new projects? What is stopping you from crafting? What is stopping you from doing all these things? Are you fearful of something? Are you fearful you're going to run out of photos to scrapbook? Are you fearful you'll never catch up on that baby album? Are you fearful you're not telling the right stories? Are you fearful you're wasting your time and no one will, look at them, and, someone eventually one year will throw them away once we're long gone, and, it's passed down to our fourth granddaughter or fourth grandson, and they're like, what am I going to do with all this great grandma's stuff? You know what I mean? Those are all valid things. One of my concerns is lack of motivation. I talked about this in Vlogmas as well, and not to sound like a broken record, but getting in here and filming some days has been so difficult, based on, things like headaches. Just those little things are sometimes really hard to get over. And it's not that I don't have fun once I get started. It's just that initial, getting going. It's like, you should go for a run, but you don't want to. But that feeling after a run, amazing. So writing down your fears and concerns is completely valid. All of them are valid no matter what. You could be fearful that your life's going to change and that those stories no longer matter. There's so many things to be fearful of, but let's try to focus on specific ones. Not the ones that we're all fearful of. We might be sad that someday these things will be thrown away that we've spent so much time and energy and money on. But that's just the fact of life. A lot of things get thrown away, but ideally, you raise people in your life to love the things that you love, like scrapbooking. But we're not all so lucky. Fears and concerns. So you could have concerns about other things as well. So, for example, that you have too much stuff, that you're drowning in supplies. I think I have too much stuff, and I am working on something to talk with you guys about, addressing that as well. Too much stuff. I think in my life in general, I've been a regular purger, especially clothes, little things like that, especially. But crafting stuff has been hit or miss. But like, for example, clothes, I've been purging clothes all of my life. I'm a big shopper, so I often, cycle through clothes very quickly, donate them, sell them, etc. So is too much stuff one of your concerns? Is not being able to complete something your concern? Do you think you're starting too many projects that you'll never be able to finish? There are so many things, and I don't want to bring up too many other ones because obviously a lot of these are shared concerns amongst most of the scrapbooking community, so I think I've already scared you people enough. So let's regroup. The fears and concerns aren't the only thing we're talking about. We also want to talk about hopes and dreams because that's the better part. Notice how much room I left so I can go back and fill the rest of this in. That's okay. That's okay. So this is sort of like what your ideal is for your scrapbooking space, your scrapbooking abilities. So, different techniques that you want to be able to do, your color mixing skills, your quickness to make a layout. What do you want to be able to do better, faster, easier? Anything. It could literally be anything under the sun. It could be that you wish you could scrapbook on the couch because you know exactly what project you're going to work on. You know exactly what papers you're going to pick out. And so you can bring that to the couch with a little table and just scrapbook it right there, and it's quick and easy. Write down some hopes and dreams. I'm not going to write down some hopes and dreams. I've shared my hopes and dreams many times. Right now it's probably, I'm trying to think what my number one hope and dream is in terms of crafting. And that would probably be designing a line. I mean, isn't that everyone's hope and dream to be able to design something that people love? So I'm going to write that. Design a paper crafting line. Now, will that ever happen? Probably not, but that's okay. It's nice to have these big goals and these big dreams, and they could be little dreams. It could be a hope that everyone in your family goes through your scrapbooks at least once a year. That would be a great one. Everyone goes through my scrapbooks. It could be everyone appreciates your scrapbooks, audibly appreciates them. It could be they appreciate your homemade birthday cards. You get a call from your granddaughter every year because she's so impressed by her birthday card. These are little goals, but they mean a lot to us, and I think that's the important part, is what means a lot to you. So I'm going to write everyone goes through my albums, which doesn't happen, but that's also because my layouts are not in albums. It's not their fault, it's my fault. And then it'll be their fault once I get them all together. So we have a lot here. A lot of brain dumping. Some more things you might want to brain dump, like I mentioned before, stories that you want to tell. Sometimes just having a track record of those can be really helpful. And again, I talk about that over on my Patreon. But just a running list of different ideas you might have in certain categories. That way, if you're feeling lost and you might have a fear that you'll never tell all of your stories, at least there's some sort of note of them, even if they don't make it into a scrapbook. Or if you're fearful you'll never get the story right, which is my fear at some layouts, there's definitely a way to, you know, have something complementary to your scrapbooks. So if you don't like journaling on a page, maybe you should have a personal journal that you write in. This sort of corresponds with the memories that you scrapbook about. There's lots of options to address our concerns, our fears, and our hopes and dreams, because these are important no matter how big they are, no matter how small they are. They're important, and you never know, they could happen. So like I said, we reviewed our goals. Did you achieve the goal? Was it realistic? Was it a success, or was it a failure? Or was it a meh in between? Maybe you didn't touch it. Maybe you changed your goals halfway through the year. That kind of stuff is great and important. And can you build on them for next year? Great things to note and great things to remember. So as we start brain dumping, and again, there's a plethora of different lists you can do depending on what you personally work on. If it's, you know, different gifts that you work on throughout the year. Maybe you're not a scrapbooker and you're a card maker. Card maker current projects. So you want to get all the anniversary cards done for next year. You know, there's different ways and parameters to look at things so they do apply to you. And if you guys have any questions or need suggestions for help on these sort of things, I'm more than happy to help you work through some of these kinds of things. So you can message me over on Instagram or leave me a comment if you're fine leaving that kind of stuff public. But I am more than happy to talk through some of these brain dumping ideas. And again, these are just the basics, because obviously I can't talk all day to you guys about this kind of stuff, but these will really, really help us for setting our goals. And I know some of it doesn't seem like it will be, but again, if you guys watched last year, at the beginning of 2019, I had a goal making video that I explain, you know, my process last year, and my process is going to change again this year because I've learned things about myself and I've learned things about scrapbooking in general that I think have changed my viewpoints and have changed my values in life in general, just because I've grown up for a year now. And a lot of things change in that year. And again, these are just some of my notes. Again, I don't feel comfortable sharing everything on the internet, but I hope you guys enjoyed my rant, my chat, whatever you want to call these 2020 Creative Reset videos. But I promise we are going to do actual crafty things later in the series, more so in January and February, where we look at, you know, tackling our goals and, you know, setting up our spaces to attack these goals. But more fun stuff is coming. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to give a thumbs up. And again, I'll have everything I mentioned linked down below so you guys can check it out. But I hope you guys enjoyed. I didn't know what sort of format to do this in, so I hope you like this little writing format. And I don't normally write this terribly, but this is one of those ink gel pens, so I went a little washy, but that's okay. But thank you guys again so much for watching, and I will see you guys again really soon. Bye!